What am I gonna cook tonight? There's a lot of different things I could. Who are you? They call me Chili Pete. Okay. Can I help you? Chili. Okay. I'm not sure what. Now I hear tell you make food. I've been known to cook things from time to time. I think I'd like some. Let me guess. Chili. Chili. Yeah. Whoa there, stranger. Chili Pete doesn't come demanding food all willy-chilly. Don't you mean all willy-nilly? No, I did not. Okay. Chili Pete pays his fair share. I brought Bison. Bison? That's great, actually. This stuff makes a really good chili. The meat is really lean, so you have to get creative with finding substitutions for the fat. And you know what? You saved the day, Chili Pete. Let's make some chili. Today we are making chili, but not just anyone. We're making it out of bison. I mentioned in another video that bison is becoming more readily available at our stores. And substituting this for beef in a lot of recipes is a really interesting thing. It changes the flavor some, it makes some way better. It's also healthier for you. There's much less fat, and the flavor is unique. But today we're actually talking about chili, and I wanted to look into that for a little bit. Chili is one of those dishes that can be divisive, but it's a quintessentially American dish, except it's not. Chili itself, the chili that we know, is actually called chili con carne, referring to a stew with meat, the stew itself being made mostly of chili peppers, which is a very Mexican dish. In fact, a lot of Mexican places had chili houses where you could go and get these stews. What we think of chili today really got popularized in the Old West and the Gold Rush. There were a bunch of people who observed and wrote that people would take meat and lard and salt and peppers and beat them and cut them and mix them all together and form them essentially into little cubes that were basically chili bouillon. And those would be preserved through all the salts, and they would last the entire trip. One account says that one of those cubes would feed at least 6 men. So that idea of chili kind of got popularized around then and turned into the chili that we know today, the five-alarm chilies and the chili cook-offs. For me, chili is one of those dishes that you can eat all year round. It doesn't have to be cold. It doesn't have to be too hot. Chili is just a good, hearty meal. And I think I've been talking about it enough. Let's just get to making it. Now, I love cooking chili. It's a ton of fun, and it takes a little bit of time, but most good food does. We've already gone ahead and prepped everything, and we'll do our ingredient flyby in just a second. But what I always love about it is all of these different things that are up here, they're all going to get thrown into a pot, sit there, and through the magic of a couple of hours, turn into a bowl of absolute deliciousness. All right, so we're making a pretty big chili. So I've got all the ingredients here, so let's just run down them. We're going to start with, we've got 6 fairly large chopped up Roma tomatoes next to a large can of crushed San Marzano tomatoes. Then we have 2 medium-sized onions, finely diced. We've got 2 habaneros and 2 jalapenos, both of them mostly seeded. I want to get a lot of that spice out, but still leave some in for a kick. We have 1 whole bell pepper, about 3 to 4 cloves, depending on your size. 2.5 cups of chicken stock. And I went with chicken stock because it's a lighter flavor and we'll let the beef. Our spices themselves, we have a teaspoon each of cayenne and paprika. We have half a teaspoon of white pepper. We got a little over 2 teaspoons of chili powder and a teaspoon of cumin. And I've also got a cinnamon stick here and a grater. Just at the end, we're going to grate some of this cinnamon in. This is a little touch that I like to do. It's a little kind of secret special trick that just helps everything pop out just a little bit more. And of course, there's the star of the show, 2 pounds of bison. Again, you should be able to get this at most grocery stores. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Also, some black pepper to taste. Let's get the Dutch oven and get going. All right, so we've put some olive oil in our Dutch oven, and it is hit temperature. I actually want to take a second and thank... I got this olive oil as a gift. Someone I know went to New Zealand and sent this back. It's really good stuff. All right, so we've got the olive oil shimmering. It is good to go. We're going to start by getting in our onions. Yes. And our bell pepper. And we're just going to take a second, give those a quick stir, and let these start to simmer down. Also throw a little bit of onion out with the spoon, just because, you know. Oh, there goes more. Now, some recipes would actually ask you to brown and drain the meat first, and if you're using a particularly fatty blend of ground beef, that's a perfectly valid idea. It's actually a really good idea. We're not doing that here because the bison itself is so lean and there's so little fat that anything that drips out is going to be negligible to anything else. In fact, if we put this in the pot as it is without the veggies, we would most likely burn that meat, or very, very quickly and very easily overcook it. Every time the peppers and onions get to just the right point of cooking, it reminds me of my grandma's house. Anytime we'd go over, if it would be a Sunday or for a meal, she'd be cooking some dish, and pepper, onion, and garlic would be always involved somehow. And it just, yeah, this right here just kind of takes me back. Alright, at this point, our onions have sweat. They've let out a whole bunch of moisture in here, which is good. It's actually what we want. They have started to clarify just a little bit. It is at this point that we can start to throw in some of the other ingredients. Primarily, we're going to start by throwing in the garlic now. Garlic you don't want to throw in too early because you can very easily overcook it and burn it, and then it just kind of ruins everyone's day. We're also, at this point, after we give the garlic just a couple of minutes, a few seconds to start to get fragrant. Once we smell the garlic joining this party, we're going to add in the other peppers. The garlic has just become fragrant. It smells amazing. Now we're going to add in these other peppers. We didn't add these in the very beginning because I didn't want to potentially overcook or burn these peppers. I also didn't want to release too much of the spice too early on. Now I decided to go with jalapeno and habanero peppers in this one for a very particular reason. Jalapenos are your classic spicy. Everyone knows what they are. They're a very gardeny, green tasting, if that makes sense for my other synesthetic people out there, spice, and it's good. I went with the habanero because habanero has a lower, slightly fruity flavor, which I feel will work really, really well with the natural earthiness that's in the bison. I really am excited and curious about this one, and it's smelling so good. Pro tip though, don't lean in, just waft it towards you. If you lean in, it's going to get all up in your... No, stop leaning in. Stop leaning in. No, you're going to get... No, it's in your nose now. It's going to burn. It burned, didn't it? I told you. Yeah, I told you. Go get a drink or something. Don't touch your eyes. What are you doing? We are going to give these a few minutes to let everything start to cook, start to open up, let out all those delicious flavors. Now, I mentioned earlier we mostly seeded the peppers. Most of the spice in peppers comes not from the pepper itself, but from the seeds and the waxy bit that holds the seeds in. The particular spice is called capsaicin, and that's what burns, and that's what we go, ooh, that's really good, I want more of that. So when you're using peppers, if you take out all the seeds and all the waxy bit, you're just getting the flavor. I want some spice in this chili because, it's chili. So I left a few seeds and a little bit of the wax in there. Now, at the onset, that's probably not much, but as this sits and simmers, that's going to enhance as it goes on. All right, our onions are pretty much completely clarified. The garlic and peppers are smelling really good. Now we are going to add the meat. Just going to plop all this on in and get stirring on it. The meat we're going to chunk up, and it's going to cook up relatively quickly. Now, the good news is we have all this other stuff in here to help kind of diffuse and keep all of the heat from hitting the meat directly. So this is going to help the meat to not burn, not immediately sear. It's just going to let it slowly come to temperature and start to be delicious. Now, I know for a recipe, I've got 2 pounds of bison in here, which sounds like a lot because, well, it is. But chili is one of those dishes that traditionally was cooked for a lot of people. And also, I never learned how to cook smaller. I grew up in a family of 5. Parents both worked. We all went to school. We would need a good hearty meal at the end of the day. Not to mention there was a heavy Italian influence on my grandma's side. So every meal we cooked was a meal for people. After I got married, then it was, hey, there's only 2 of us. Why are you still cooking all these massive meals? And I went, I don't know any better. Kind of like Richard Gere in that movie where he had no place else to go. I have no other recipe to cook. All right, our bison is almost completely cooked, and this is exactly what we wanted. The veggies released a lot of juices, which kept the bison from drying out, and everything else in here kept the heat diffused away just enough to keep this from burning or cooking too quickly. Now that the bison is almost completely done, now we are going to add all of our tomatoes. We're going to start with the Roma tomatoes. Hello, Romas. In you go. So basically what we're looking for here is we want the tomato just to start to break down, start putting its different juices out there. I went with Roma on this one because it has a overall sweeter flavor, which is actually going to work really well with the spiciness that we put in there. And the flesh of the Roma breaks down a whole lot easier than the beefsteaks and helps add some more moisture and some more liquid in there. This is going to be a very thirsty chili. And once we get all of our ingredients in there, it's going to start soupy at first, but most chilies do. All right, perfect. Some of these are starting to break down, which is what I was looking for. Now we can start to add the rest of our tomatoes and some more of our liquid. Now, as for tomatoes, I mentioned before, we went and we got a bigger can of the San Marzano crushed tomatoes. It said crushed. That feels slightly saucy. And our chicken stock. Now, I said I've got about 2 cups of chicken stock here, which might seem like a lot, but again, as this sits and simmers and cooks, the liquid is all going to cook down. And all the vegetables are going to be the star of the show. Ah, there were some tomatoes in there. Yeah. So now that we have all of our solid and liquid ingredients in, now we can add our spices. I mentioned before going down the list, you basically just toss everything in. Like this. My cinnamon stick. You don't need a lot of this. This is very potent. Let's give everything a good mix. It's at this stage that you're going to look at this and go, this doesn't really smell like chili. And you'll be right. This needs time to sit and simmer, which is exactly what we're going to give this. We are going to give this time. How much time, you ask? Well, that really depends. The flavors will mostly be married and mellowed in about 40 minutes to an hour. After, of course, this comes to a boil, and then you set it down to a simmer. I like to let this simmer at least 2 hours. Again, that's just because I want these flavors and these peppers and this meat, I want everything that's in here to do what it does best, and that is to become delicious. So we're going to let this come to a boil. We are going to put this down to a simmer, and we are going to let this sit for at least 2 hours. You know, I was looking up a bunch of different recipes before we started, and I came across one for Donner chili. They said it was an old family recipe. So, our chili has been sitting and simmering and turning wonderful for the last hour and a half, almost 2 hours. All the flavors have melded. It smells delicious. I'm going to go ahead and make myself a bowl of it and see how we did. Chili, of course, would not be as great without that sprinkle of cheese. You can do straight cheddar. I like to do the blend. It just gives a nicer, little more mellow kick to it. And as you can tell, we also have a nice crusty bread, because a crusty bread with chili is really good. This bread we actually made ourselves with the pizza dough recipe. It's actually really simple. All you do is, after you let it rise the first time, you shape it into your bread and then let it proof a second time for about an hour. I can go over that in another video. But for right now, let us talk about this delicious looking bowl of chili. I'm just going to get into it and let you know how it is. Besides, very hot. Oh, wow. So the Bison is in fact the star of the show. The Bison has a wonderful, really soft texture. It's got a deep, almost grassy flavor to it, which works absolutely wonderfully with the peppers. The spices in there, they're not overpowering, they're not overwhelming. There's a little bit of tingle on the tongue, a little kick in the back of the throat, but it's not too hot to taste it. And then all the other flavors just work together absolutely beautifully. This is a wonderful, wonderful bowl of chili. I'm gonna have a few more bites. You guys want to go ahead and set up for the wrap up? I'm gonna work on this one myself. Don't judge me. Chili has been around for a long time, from Mexico to the Americas. It helped keep people cool in the summer, warm in the winter, and it was one of the foods that helped support and forge the West. And you can make chili just about any kind of way you want. Although, you might have noticed that in this recipe there were no beans. That's because I went with the International Chili Society's rules. See, the International Chili Society says that a traditional chili does not have beans in it. If you wish to break the rules and be a rebel, go for it. That's what food's all about. Have fun with it. The only other thing left to do is make sure I've got a bowl over here for Chili Pete. Mighty kind of you, stranger. It's time for me to be moving on. But where will you go now, Chili Pete? I go wherever that chilly wind takes me. Okay. Come back, Shane. I mean, Chili Pete.